literally just sitting there, and a guy with a leaf blower walked right up to my window and just started. I don't even have like a gardener. I guess he's just like a neighborhood guy with a leaf blower who's out front right now and just that's like Instagram live crashing. I think somebody from a rival bean company sent him here to sabotage our Instagram
like,
live.
Oh my God, it's Buffalo Trace out there.
It's out. That's who it was. It was Harlan Wheatley in my yard with the leaf blower. Anyway, back to where we were. Sorry to interrupt you. We were talking about, is the Old Tub name from the fact that maybe they batted the whiskey in a tub, and you were launching into that.
And old is important on here. Legally, to call bourbon, I think a lot of people don't realize this. It does have to be aged in new oak, but it's just a new oak vessel, and there's no particular timestamp on that. So you could take whiskey off a still, put it in a oak bucket, carry it across the room, and call that bourbon. Most people wouldn't enjoy that. The color would not be there,
right.
For obvious reasons. But there is no real age statement on that. So when something is classified as old, back in the day, that meant that it was a high-end, a high-level product because
right.
it had been sitting around for a little while. So that's where you start to see a lot of that old tub, old granddad, old overhold, all of those olds are coming from a time where it was common to do that.
So that brings me to my next question of things that have been revamped. I'm going to go run and grab the bottle real fast because I left it in the other room. But I'm going to ask you this question, and you can answer it while I'm running to grab it. You got it, so I don't even have to run and grab it. Awesome. So this is the other whiskey that blew my mind this year. Someone's like, have you had like the new Baker's? And I was like, Baker's, what do you mean new? It's been around forever. It comes in like a skinny bottle with like a black wax top. And they're like, no. It's in like a different bottle now with a big heavy cork. And so I saw that it was a single barrel. And that was the first bottle that I bought for myself when I started at Mission. And then I had
really?
Yeah, there were other customers from my previous employer who sort of followed me over to Mission. And they said, you should check this out. So I did. And that also blew my mind. That's like my favorite whiskey of the year so far.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I love Baker's 7-year. I mean, I think it's such a beautiful bourbon. It's bottled at 107 proof. It's 7-year. This year we've done it as a single barrel. That's really important because we don't have temperature-controlled rack houses. So when Booker was creating the small batch collection, Baker was actually his right-hand man throughout that whole entire process. And they really believed, the two of them, that the best place in our rack house to pick a barrel and have the best whiskey would come from the exact center. Not too high where, the proof has maybe gone up, not too low where the proof has maybe gone down from the angel share during maturation process, not something too close to the walls, but something that's snuggled right in the center of all those other barrels. That's where the best flavor would come from. So in our rack houses, that's where we pull Booker's from. And Booker always intended, I want this to be at barrel strength. I want it to be non-chill filtered and, all of those things. I want it to be the exact bourbon that we're basically pulling from this barrel and putting into a bottle. So that's where you see Booker's. And then all around that, in a little circle around that, is where you start to see the barrels for Baker's. And then around that, you'll see Knob Creek and Basil Hayden's. And then all surrounding that, like the protective shield all the way around, is where you'll find Jim Beam.
Right.
And Jim Beam will pull 1,000 barrels at a time and bottle that. I mean, it's the world's #1 selling bourbon. So it's a much bigger production than you would find around something like Booker's or Baker's, where we have a very small yield every year because there's just so many of those barrels that we can actually fit into that place in the rack house. I also love this whiskey because it is named after Baker, who is still alive. He's the last of that generation who's still with us, and he's just a wonderful, gentle soul, just a beautiful human being. He just turned 84 this last summer. He just also started dating he has a new girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
He's got like this wonderful cat named Zero that he rescued out of zero temperature weather, and
wow.
He's just a wonderful soul. If you ever get a chance to meet him, he doesn't like things that are too hoity-toity. He definitely would rather just have a bologna sandwich and maybe a Baker's and Pepsi with you. So he's just a wonderful guy. So I get emotionally attached to this particular bottle as well. But you're right. Going to that single barrel, it was really a choice where we're sitting there looking at our beautiful small batch collection, and we're like, how do we set Baker's aside and let it be the special thing that it is meant to be within the whole collection? And that's where we decided, to start tasting all the individual barrels and see if we should maybe be running with a single barrel program. And it turns out that was a huge win for Baker's this year. Yeah.
That was the like huge win in terms of like doing something right for the consumer and like everybody being stoked. But the real huge win was like last week or whenever that was, 10 days ago, when Knob Creek took home the #2 whiskey of the year. And it's like,
yes,
that was such a cool thing to see, because like I'm somebody who sort of built a retail career on going around the big guys and finding things that were unique outside of it. But like my dream isn't to like live on the exterior of the booze business. My dream is for like really big companies to take their products that they already make and just make really good versions of their products. Like not that like normal Knob Creek isn't good. It is good. But like, if you have 12-year-old Knob Creek, why not make it? And if you've got 15 or 18 or 20, like why not make it instead of like using those barrels to stretch out larger blends? And so like to see a brand that is available at every sports bar across America and at every airport and like in every, just like general drinking establishment. It's in 1.75s at Costco. Not necessarily the 12-year, but the brand. Like, nothing makes me happier personally than when, like, big brands do something right and, like, really cool within the label of their big brand, instead of, like, making it, like, a private label or putting it in a decanter or, like, making it some special thing. Like, just use Knob 12 to make Knob, to elevate Knob as a brand so that people aren't so, like, I can always get Knob Creek. What else you got? And that goes into my question. I guess there is a question in all of this, which is what do you think has changed at Beam over the last, like, besides the purchase of, now I got to go to the other side. Besides the purchase, I'm being like completely taken over by these people. Besides the purchase by Suntory, what else has happened at Beam that has like changed over the last few years, where like all of these decisions are being made to do all of this stuff, to like make these changes that are resulting in all of these great whiskeys?
Well, we do have some really beautiful roadmaps that are set up around it. This is getting a little bit technical because I do want to get into the age statements around this too, because that's very important. But we do have some roadmaps. At Beam, we kind of feel like short-term people shouldn't be making long-term decisions.
Right.
And so we really leave those long-term decisions in the hands of a number of people that have been there for a very long time. We have one woman who's still with us. Her name is Kathleen De Benedetto. She was also alongside Booker the whole time he was creating that. She's in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. You wouldn't know it to talk to her. She's just a sweet, gentle, wonderful human being. But if I was in the Bourbon Hall of Fame, I would wear a hat every day that said I'm in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. But she's very humble and very kind. And one of the first batches of Booker's was actually called Kathleen's Batch, and it's named after her. And she's one of those big decision makers around some of these brands, especially a brand like Knob Creek. That Knob Creek, we have the hardest guardrails around right now. That is something, if I could say our current master distiller, Fred No, if he was a whiskey, I would say it would be Knob Creek. Sort of this like industry standard for a robust bourbon. People sort of look at that as the baseline around what a robust bourbon should be. Always 100 proof, always no bullshit. We made a maple version of Knob Creek, and it was so popular that we keep bottling that. But Booker's just as something he would bottle specially for the people who worked at the distillery and very good friends of the family. But he released it as an actual bottling in '88, and then in '92, Knob Creek, Basil Hayden's, and Baker's all arrived on the scene. And that's where you really start to see in the sales of bourbon, they had really started to slip and the trajectory was pretty heading straight to the ground for that in the 70s, in the early 80s, and towards the end of the 80s and early 90s, you start to see this small batch collection comes out, and then other distilleries are starting to take note of the small batch collection, and they're putting their own small batches out, and you start to see bourbon really take a rise. And something like Knob Creek with a 9-year age statement, I mean, you have to be able to plan 9 years out for what your product is going to be. And Knob Creek, you're right, it started getting sold into all of these places, all over airports and, Costco and all of these things. And so we lost that age statement for a little while. And we worked really, really hard to get it back. So this year, if you're drinking Knob Creek this year with this 9-year age statement on it, this whiskey was made in 2011. And we put it down for this release this year. So we were able to get that age statement back. And to celebrate that, we put out the 12-year, and I don't have a bottle of it, but it's a burgundy colored label, the 15-year.
Right.
15 is a limited time offering. If you can find it, get it, put it in your collection, keep it. It's only coming out this year. We don't have enough of it to really do a release again next year. But the 12-year is so delicious, and we all agree that it's, before any accolades came in, that it's, I think, some of the best liquid that we have coming out of the distillery right now. It's, of everything that we're drinking here today, this is my favorite. You can tell because I put a little bit of a hurt on this bottle.
I've got I'm like down to like this with the, it's what I'm drinking more than anything.
It's so lovely, this one. And we just decided we were going to do an annual release of this with the 12-year. So, again, if you can find that one, get it and try it. This one, I think, is priced, the 15-year is very, very high in price. But this one, I think, is priced in a way that you can really enjoy it at home and try it with your friends and your family. What else was I going to say about the Knob Creek aging process? I guess that's it. It's really just that we've been able to get that in that bottle, and we do have some of those barrels that are sitting there and waiting for the next 12-year. We also have some really exciting innovations coming at the distillery. We're not really going to open the doors to a new visitor center and a new distillery until 22, but because of the pandemic, we took the chance to just shut everything down. The distillery is obviously still in operation, but we have no visitors there at all, and we ramped up the construction of a new small batch distillery. It's going to be called the Fred Bino Distillery, after our current master distiller, and that is going to have all copper pot stills. So you're going to see even more flavor changes in the next, decade or so, like as we start to make on those stills and then put them away for about 9 years, 10 years, 12 years, you'll start to see the difference in that, where we'll be distilling all of the small batch collection on those copper pot stills.
It's a really interesting time for Beam, and I think I told you this when I was texting with you earlier. When I first started in the business, everyone was sort of like, bourbon, what else is out there? All I've ever had is Beam. And it was like, nobody knew anything else. So it's like, Beam and Knob and Maker's Mark, but like, what's Buffalo Trace? Oh, is Wild Turkey actually good? Yeah, it is. What's Heaven Hill? What's like Michter's? What's Willet? And it was like this exploration of like, what else is out there besides Jim Beam? And I feel like Beam sort of suffered from like being the top dog when everybody wanted to like have these adventures. Sort of like when a travel destination gets too cool, people start to go like to like the lesser traveled places, and then those places become cool, and then all of a sudden the place that everybody was trying to get away from is now cool again. And I feel like Beam is like on that path, where I think Beam is like the best bourbon distillery in the United States right now. Everything I've had from Beam. I mean, I know you think that, but like I was never that person. I was like, I guess I'll drink Beam if it's there. But now I'm like, what else is Beam doing? Like, I love the Old Top. I love the Bakers. I love the Knob. Like, give me more of stuff like that, and I will buy it every time.
And there's really interesting innovations coming out of there, too. I mean, we work primarily from 2 mash bills. We have the mash bill, the old Granddad mash bill, and then we have the Beam mash bill. And those are the 2 biggest ones that we work from, and then just make various choices within that on how, on the whole process, on what separates this bourbon from this bourbon. But we actually have 20 mash bills there. And there are a number of things in barrels right now that are really exciting. Some things I can give away, some things I can't, of what's coming down the line in the future. But, if you pay attention to our signature harvest collection, that could give you some sort of an idea of what it might be coming in the future. We did that as an experiment while Booker was still alive. Booker was, towards the end of his life, he was completely with it. He just physically wasn't completely there. So he was really a major part in developing those individual bits. So the Harvest Collection, for people who may not know, is a single bottling of a red winter wheat, and then a single bottling of 100% red winter wheat, and then a single bottling of 100% corn, and then one that's brown rice, and all of those things. And the brown rice is something that I can kind of give away now because our first release with the brown rice bourbon in a blend came out this year, and that was in Little Book Chapter 4.
All right.
Part of it is a brown rice bourbon, and so that's something that Freddie is really tinkering with. Is he's about to take on the reins as the master distiller there. It's a huge job. He's been apprenticing for 20 years and he basically kind of grew up at the distillery, so he's very protective of brands like Knob Creek and of the distillery itself and of the Beam name. And for him, it's important that people, when they think of Beam, think of integrity. That's really the number one word he wants everybody to think about when they're thinking about what's happening at the distillery. I feel like he would be so honored to hear you say, I think Beam is the number one distillery and bourbon making now, and I'm always looking forward to their new innovations because he's really driving that boat. So you'll start to see some things where we're really messing around with the grains, and we're really starting to mess around with different types of American whiskey, and you'll start to see the maturation process might be a little bit different, and we'll have a different approach too, because we're about to have a bunch of amazing minds at the distillery. Right now at our distillery, we are, because of our marriage with Suntory, we became the Global Innovations Center for all of Beam Suntory. That's at the Claremont Distillery. So we have a whole packaging department with 3 packaging scientists there. We have 3 scientists who are just focused on sensory. So everything, the look, the taste, the smell, the feel, the glug, glug, glug sound, they're kind of in control of all of that. We have a robust maturation department with these nerds that are down there smelling bug holes every day because, they're just in charge of the maturation department. So all of that is coming together into a curriculum to study distillation, particularly where bourbon is concerned in distillation. They're going to start this program at Kentucky University, I believe, next year. And we've put $5 million into a facility at the university, and those students are going to be studying part-time at the university and part-time at the distillery. So they'll be able to be in the small batch area with the copper pot stills, and then they'll be able to be in the big, production area where we have the largest column still in North America, for sure. I think I've seen a larger column still than that actually in Japan, but it's the largest column still in North America. So we'll have all of these other minds within the student body that are just be kind of floating around the distillery. So we're about to go into a very, very creative time.
No, it's fun. It's great to see things switch. It's no fun when everybody just drinks the same bourbon over and over again. It's no fun when customers ask for the same bourbon over and over again. It's no fun when people don't want to try new things or go back and retaste things. That's the fun part of working in the retail side of the business, is that you can get excited by so many things, and it's fun when something that was sort of put aside, where I've had that, surprises you and then wows you and then draws you back in and then creates that enthusiasm again. I feel like if you lose that, then you're probably not excited about the business anymore.
Yeah, agreed. And these guys really do believe. I mean, it's funny, when Booker created the small batch collection, Fred, our current master distiller, was a roadie for Hank Williams Jr. He was just traveling the country having a great time, with Hank Williams Jr. during that time. And Booker called him up and said, "Son, come on home. I need your help at the distillery." And basically what he assigned him to do was to get to know all of these whiskeys as deeply as possible, and then take them around the country and just one bartender at a time, just introduce them, and one consumer at a time, because Booker really believed, all people have to do is try it. and then they'll like it. So that's what we need, is to have somebody to go around and get as many people to try this as possible. And when Booker handed over the reins to the distillery to Fred, he started on a little fishing trip to Alaska where he took Fred out there, and Fred just thought they were fishing, and that's where Booker handed over the keys to Knob Creek. So he started with that brand first, and then they started making a move at switching him to be in control of all of the various brands. And so that similar thing is starting to happen now. Freddie's not in control of Knob Creek just yet, but they have given him the reins to do Little Book, which is what they're all of their names are Frederick Booker. No, they're just various numbers behind that. There's a junior and a third and a fourth. But Freddie, his grandfather used to refer to him as Little Book, but he goes by Freddie. So that's where that particular thing came from. And so they're just all about kind of maintaining that integrity, maintaining that flavor profile, but also some really cool innovations. They've done, Freddie in particular has really branched out into blending of various bourbons.
Which is what I'm like, that's kind of where I think the future is. There's some people that are doing that, but I would like to see more of that happening within. I mean, Four Roses has done that forever, and other distilleries too. But that excites me when the blend is put together, and then what's in the blend is put on the label, so people can like sort of imagine how those components come together. I think that's like exciting.
We have one that I really love that's out this year that is, or it came out last year. That's sort of a marriage between the Suntory and the Beam family. It's called, blending in Japanese whiskey is extremely important. Our master blender eats cold soba noodles every day for breakfast and lunch because he wants to try and get his palate to be the same every day. So, I mean, that's real commitment. I love food too much for that to be my life, but he's really committed to it. And so this was, the Legion, I don't have a bottle of it here, but Legion is one that was, all of the bourbons were made by Fred, and then the blending was all done by Shinji Fukuya-san, who's their chief blender there. And the bourbons are lovely. There's one that's just a 5-year-old, Beam. And then there's two. One of them was finished for a couple of summers in Oloroso sherry butts, and one was finished in California Cabernet barrels. And so these 3 different bourbons come together in this beautiful blend that is very exciting. You get those kind of warm, nutty notes from the sherry, and you get that kind of almost like vermouthy kind of notes from the California Cabernet barrels coming into that bourbon. It's really lovely, but it's relatively new. Just like you said, there's a few places that are doing it, have been doing it for a long time, but it's not something that people really reach for. So for me, like, I could talk about these bourbons all day that we're talking about right now. Obviously, I love them all so much, but if somebody was like, what's a weird new thing for me to try, that's the one I would probably go to, because it's also priced, below $60. And so it's something that is, even though it has this Japanese element, it's affordable and meant to be shared amongst friends. So
that's next on my list. That's actually another one that came out during my gap that I need to go back and try. So I'll put that on the thing on the docket.
I'm curious to get your opinion on that. I'm really curious to get your opinion. And you know what we can even do? I'll say it right here on our Instagram Live. I have a little bit of the component whiskeys left.
Oh, wow. So we can taste the individual.
Give it a taste. Let me know what you think, and then I'll see if we can send over some like little vials of the component whiskeys for you to try as well.
Would be amazing. I would love that.
Really cool. Yeah, you bet.
Thank you for doing this tonight. I have to now go splice all of the interruptions together into one coherent video so that it all plays together. I appreciate you hanging with me through the gardener from hell and the other unexpected interruptions. But it's been a pleasure.
I thought for sure it would be my dogs. I thought I'm waiting for a FedEx package. I thought for sure they would start barking. So I'm glad it wasn't on my end.
I wasn't gonna feed the cats before this, but I did because I knew they would be stalking me like this one back there right now. They just circle me while I do this, and I'm just like praying that they don't knock over the phone. Anyways, thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Cheers, my
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.